Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Lich speaking, Brill. I want to let you all know that the episode you're about to listen to has been recorded prior to the news that came out that Wizards of the Coast is releasing a revamped version of Curse of Strahd. What you're about to listen to is criticisms of the original book. When that revamped version comes out this later October, no doubt will this series cover that. But for right now, we are going to cover what we can with the original 2016 release. Okay, bye. Enjoy the episode. Mwah! Big kissies.
His weapon was far too large to rightfully be called a sword. It was larger, thicker, heavier, and cruder than any normal blade. By all accounts, it was no more than a hulking mass of iron.
Under the raging storm clouds, the vampire Count Strahd von Zarovich stands silhouetted against the ancient walls of Castle Ravenloft. Rumbling thunder pounds the castle spires. The wind's howling increases as he turns his gaze down toward the village of Barovia. Far below, yet not beyond his keen eyesight, a party of adventurers has just entered his domain. Strahd's face forms the barest hint of a smile as his dark plan unfolds. He knew they were coming, and he knows why they came, all according to his plan. A lightning flash rips through the darkness, but Strahd is gone! Only the howling of the winds fills the midnight air. The master of Castle Ravenloft is having guests for dinner, and you are invited. That sounds like Mandark. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Dexter, I know what you're thinking. And yes, I'm smarter than you. Hello, everyone. I am the villain of this podcast and your host, Archlich Brill. Welcome to my demi-domain where I control all of you. And next to me this week is not going to be the lovely Doc. He is busy clearing a dungeon with his wifey. This week I have the Storm Giant CR16, I believe. John, hello. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. That was some nice fanfic you were reading at the beginning. That was very scary.
Oh, I know.
Can I just say that?
It was terrifying because it's been officially printed by Wizards of the Coast.
Hey, congrats.
I'd say so. That's right, everybody. This week we are tearing into a module review that I know for a fact will be more than just one episode. There's a lot of different opinions on this one. It's Curse of Strahd, an adventure released all the way back in 2016. The best thing we got from that year. And we will be diving into it this week, trying to unfold the many folds and folds and folds and details and folds behind the great vampire. But before we get into that, top of the ticket, we have a Patreon. That's right. We're trying to feed ourselves and our editor. Any amazing and awesome, incredible sound bites that you hear, any art, anything like that, comes from our editor. He's a goblin and he needs to be fed. All the money goes to him and then right back into the show. So if you go to Patreon, which the goblin will scream here,
Patreon.com/DumpStat Oh, my dummy hurts.
Fantastic. Then you will be able to donate a couple of bucks. It really helps us out. The other thing is something that you are involved with, John, is that I am going to be DMing Rime of the Frost Maiden. You've probably heard this before in other episodes, but we are doing it. And by the time you hear this, an episode is probably out or about to be out. So get on, hang on to your hats, and get ready for me and 4 other players to take you through Icewind Dale. I'm going to be giving DM tips throughout the module, probably in between little segments, and we're going to have some cool effects. I'm really excited about it. If the campaign is great, it'll be many sessions. If it sucks, it's going to be one. But don't worry.
Oh, I think it's going to be pretty nice, bud.
Oh, you think so, bud?
I do. I really do, bud.
I'm really excited for it, honestly. I'm really jazzed about it. It is, though, I'm learning very, very quickly. It might be a bit more of a beast for a DM to kind of tackle more than other modules. It feels very lore heavy and memorization. So that'll be a different kind of task for me that I'm really interested about.
Nice.
Now, big issue is that we're doing Curse of Strahd. And this is going to be probably multiple parts, as I mentioned before. I am calling this Curse of Strahd review, autopsy of a vampire, part 1 of 38, the community will hate us for this.
Yes, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More than I think a lot of people understand.
Yes.
So I brought you in because you've played Curse of Strahd, and you and I have talked in private multiple times about our feelings because we've both played in it. I'm pretty forever DM. It's one of those modules that I've been circling around, but I've been in Curse of Strahd groups before. And so have you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Fundamentally, yes.
Certainly.
I was hoping that you could, for the people at home, give us a quick plot synopsis of the module. Now, please remember there are spoilers this podcast, so if you have yet to play it, then maybe tune out. This is mainly for new DMs or DMs coming in here who are interested in Curse of Strahd, or maybe you've played through it and you want to hear maybe a different opinion on how to go again, or maybe not at all. So, John, please take it away on what's up with Curse of Strahd, bro.
What is up with Curse of Strahd? That is a good question. So, yeah, it was my first campaign. It was my second D&D session. It was about a year and a half. This is really more from a player's perspective as someone who experienced it.
Sure.
Yeah, so the plot is you are, you're doing your thing, maybe you're drinking some mead at a bar. I'm sorry, tavern.
Tavern, yeah.
And then you go outside, maybe you do number 1, and then you turn around and you are in Barovia. Suddenly there is mist, and it is strangely looking like a horror movie from the early 1980s. You are transported into the domain of Strahd, the sexiest vampire ever. And then pretty much you have to survive. You're trying to get your bearings. You go through the death house. Maybe a few player characters die, and then you move on to Barovia, the village, and then you do different things. But basically the plot, the best I can sum it up, you are thrown into a very dark, a lot of black ichor and gray fog, a very dark place, and you have to survive over the course of the campaign and hopefully in the end defeat Strahd and really escape.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way I can really sum it up in terms of like the experience of it, I guess.
You are in this module trapped in a domain run by a vampire, and that aesthetic of grim, kind of Halloween with everybody being kind of dour. It's very Transylvanian.
Yes.
And kind of its Eastern European flares. There are places where you can go that most likely will kill you. And this is one of those modules that will take players out. But what's funny about it is when you die in this realm, your soul can't be laid to rest. You will go back into someone else's body. The souls of this demiplane walk around and manifest in odd and interesting ways. And the supreme ruler is Strahd, who puppets everything and is not only the big bad, but has complete and total sadistic control of everything.
Sure does.
Sure does. And that is one of the interesting things about this module. So some of you, when I just pitched it, if you ignored the spoiler warning and you're just a fresh-faced player, some of you went woo and some of you went, I don't know. And that definitely is a weird, I guess, side effect of the module, mainly because this came out in 2016 and it's had 4 years, at least in 5th edition, of hype. This Castle Ravenloft and this Dracula clone that is Strahd have been in other editions. It's a legacy character, and it's been printed out for 5e kind of early on in 5e's life. And so people have gravitated around it. And what started out as a module that was probably intended for a couple of Halloween sessions has exploded into a monolith of a module. It's considered by many to be the best module, and Strahd to be the best D&D villain.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why when I actually today figured that I was going to be covering it, I got a little bit stressed out.
Yeah.
It's kind of stressful because you want to be honest with people and you want to present your opinion. But when the court of opinion is completely one-sided for a thing or against a thing, you really feel like a flat earther. Like you're walking into something that is completely and totally just baffling to you. If everybody loves the MCU and you're a DC fan, it's weird.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to express your opinions and not feel like a crazy person.
Right.
Because I'll be honest, for this module in particular, I'm not really sure I see exactly what other people are seeing.
I think you are completely right. It was my first campaign going through it. You know, I was like also watching Critical Role, and I realized I could make like an insight check if I like wanted to. You know, I was like super green, super new, and like so going through it, it was a super interesting experience. Like oh man, every emotion. Like I thinking like it wasn't that I hated it, and it wasn't that it wasn't fun, but for me, a lot of the time, like, you know, I'd meet out with my friends at the gym before, and we'd be like, hey, I kind of don't want to do this. Like, it just like there is like a sense of like anxious anticipation coming into most of the sessions just because, you know, it's a pretty intense module to go through. It's weird because as, you know, the campaign ended and I was looking into just what other people thought about it, other people's experiences. I mean, you're completely right. There's a lot of love out there for this module, a lot of love, almost like a religious sense of devotion to it. And I can definitely see like certain things that I do like and that I want to emulate when I'm DMing and, you know, things I want to go through again when I'm being a player. But there is definitely a lot of stuff going on that really needs to be very carefully thought about in a really critical sense, because you know, there's some things that just that just create a feeling of this. Oh man, this isn't fun. Like this is this is hard. Like Halloween's fun, but like, I mean, holy shit, are you going to listen to the Halloween soundtrack for 3 days? Like there comes a point where it's like, oh man, like this is brutal.
Well, it's funny because I have taken multiple trips to Barovia. I have taken multiple trips in campaigns. And almost early on, especially in like 2017, 2018, I had this mindset that I was fucking crazy. And if you had asked me at the time, hey, what do you think of Curse of Strahd? I would have vomited something akin to, I like vampires.
Right.
I like werewolves. And it's almost like me trying to convince myself because I feel like the target audience. I'm a DM who loves Dark Souls, which is a survival horror game. I dressed as Dracula as a child for like 3 years on Halloween. I was a huge devotee to the Dracula like Hammer movies.
You dressed up as Dracula for Halloween?
For 3 years as a kid, yeah.
Man, that's such a specific... I know. Fucking Spider-Man.
No. I was Batman, and then I was Dracula because that's also a Batman, and then I was Batman Beyond. And then somewhere like in my last years of Halloween, I was like, I'm just going to be that creepy Burger King guy from the commercials. I'll admit to it. That was me as a child.
No, I like that.
But it was this thing where I was sitting there going like, I'm the target. I'm the DM who would love this.
Right.
I should love this. Why am I not connecting with this? And when I would talk to other DMs, they'd be like, oh, dude, I just murked my entire party of Curse of Strahd. And I'd sit there and I'd just over and over again, just going, what? Okay. Yes. And eventually I even jumped into your campaign briefly where you first got into D&D and was playing Curse of Strahd. And even then I remember I was sitting there going like, okay, I'm into it. Hell yeah. I'm here, baby. Woot woot. Here we go. Yes, come on. I'm in this. Come on. And then it got to the point where when I played with you guys again, I made my character linked to Curse of Strahd. I made him a Vistani. I made him basically a native to that demiplane. And it was just me trying my damnedest to make this work in my head somehow. But I do feel a little bit better because this morning I decided to kind of, in my research, ease my mind a little bit. I sent out over our community just a question. Hey, have you played Curse of Strahd? Did you like it? Did you not? Why or why not? That kind of a thing. I was really pleased to see there were other people going, yeah, I'm not in love with it, and I feel kind of crazy.
Wow.
So that made me feel a little bit better, and not like I was just Captain Ahab hunting the white whale. That was nice. But I agree with you that the fervor, and there's entire Reddit threads and communities built to adding to the campaign. So with that being said, I think we should start by just listing out some of our overarching criticisms behind the module.
Sure.
And I do want to mention this to our audience. If you love Curse of Strahd, we are doing this in the most tasteful way we possibly can to honor how we feel, but also to respect the art. And we will be giving ideas of how we can improve this overall. So looking at Barovia and looking at the actual kind of adventure as a whole, what stands out to you that needs improvement kind of almost right away?
So circling back to what you were saying, as I've matured and began playing and, creating my own campaign and stuff like that, I definitely like the sense of horror. I like leaning into that. I like leaning into that kind of the grim, kind of gritty theme. I think it's cool. I think there's a lot to do there. I think it lends itself to really interesting experiences. And the module definitely leans into that. That being said, I think one of the things that really comes off to me is there needs to, part of it is just walking through Barovia. There comes a point where you're no longer surprised. The introduction, my introduction at least, was through Death House, and my character and one other survived. One character got killed by a grick in the oven because he got too close to the oven. The other one got blobbed by the gibbering whatever down in the basement. And then the other one went running into the woods afterwards and was torn apart by werewolves. So, that's pretty,
gruesome.
The stakes are set. They're high, and it's brutal. It's gruesome. And that was awesome. That was so cool. I was like, that was sick. I ran out of a burning building and jumped out, and that's so cool. So parts like that, I can see why this is so cool to people, why people love this stuff, because that was awesome to experience. But I think what eventually got me more in the long term is when every encounter is life or death, brutal, gruesome, one wrong move and you're dead. When every single village and person and encounter has these deeply messed up, really depressing elements to them all the time, when everything's always gray. You can't see the fucking sun. There comes a point where it's no longer interesting, it's no longer surprising, and it can get really depressing. When there's this lack of contrast constantly in everything, when it's all doom and gloom and, gothic horror, it can get a little much. One specific element that really got me, through the campaign, we're like, oh, we gotta survive. And we're like, the Abbey. I forget the village, but the Abbey is a safe haven. We can get there and it's going to be good. He's a healer, a cleric. It's going to be great. And then we get there and he's insane. There are gibbering freaks screaming, fucking freaks going we're hungry, like everyone. And
right.
In that moment, I was this just feeling of just existential, why? So I think one thing that really stands out to me is that there needs to be some kind of contrast. It can't all be dark. It can't all be gruesome and hard and scary and depressing, because that's going to be boring, and you're going to lose your players because at some point they're going to stop looking in those rooms. They're going to be encounter shy. They don't want to fucking die. They want to survive. And so there needs to be some more variety there. I think that's one of the big things that really stuck out to me as I was playing through it, and as I was reflecting on it. There needs to be more variety, a little bit more contrast, I think.
Well, it's funny because I had one commenter when we actually made that post, and he said essentially, well, it's Dark Souls. It's like D&D Dark Souls.
Right.
And somebody replied to him saying, in Dark Souls, you can rest at a bonfire.
Mm.
You can walk away from parts of the game that will kill you and go back to places that are safe.
Mm.
You don't get that.
No.
I've played in 4 separate campaigns, and each one, different DMs, different styles. There are no breaks. There are no places where you can catch your breath. And it's funny because what you've mentioned is something that a year later in Tomb of Annihilation, the team behind the actual Curse of Strahd module realized in a strange way. Tomb of Annihilation is based on Tomb of Horrors, which the basic concept is I'm going to kill your character. Ha 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 ha. That's it.
Nice.
That's what Gary Gygax wanted. He wanted to challenge cocky players, is literally his terminology. So he wanted to challenge high-level players who thought there were no other places. And in revamping the Tomb of Horrors, because it's also one of those legacy modules in the same way that Castle Ravenloft has, in Tomb of Annihilation, they hired apparently the writer behind Adventure Time to add a sense of comedy in the world of Chult.
Wow.
And the reason why they did that, because they realized having players just go into a tomb where they will die isn't fun. It isn't, So they said, we need to have some kind of contrast, some kind of balance, a rising action and a relaxing place for people to go with quirky characters and funny names. People like that in D&D. In Barovia, you're going to meet someone who's sad, someone who's insane, someone who's angry, and someone who's probably indifferent. And that's kind of the issue.
Yeah.
And you go through, I think, really cool set pieces.
Definitely.
But each set piece is glued together with depression.
Yeah, totally.
And that's kind of, doesn't it wear? I've had different DMs try different things for this, but there does come a point where you're pushing and pushing and pushing against the darkness, and you're pushing and you're pushing. One time we had a paladin who was Mr. Haha, life is good. And even towards at one point in the campaign, kind of early on even, he was like, holy shit, guys, we should just lie down and die. Like we can't keep pushing. And that's because there's nowhere to rest. There's going to be a werewolf coming around the corner, or some kind of crazed thing, or Strahd will see you resting and be like, haha, I'm going to knock a tree down on you or something like that, like something bizarre and weird. So suddenly you have nowhere to break.
Yeah.
Even when you're working 9 to 5 at that corporate job you hate, you get to go home. I think that also, like, Barovia traps you, the realm traps you, and the villain tortures you, and there are no breaks from that.
Yeah.
You are stuck. And I've noticed that's not really any other adventure. Most other modules, you go to a place on your own accord. Barovia, there have been little options in the beginning for Curse of Strahd where you could go on your own accord for some reason. But I've seen most DMs go, you're hanging out and the fog comes. And everyone's like, wait, what? Like, why did the fog come? Could it leave? Yeah. What is the fog? And they're like, it's the fog. And
one of the players, he was literally like role playing, like, oh, my character was out in the woods and he takes a shit, and then he like he sees like red eyes in the fog, passes out, wakes up, pants down.
Welcome to Barovia.
And there he is, and that's the one who got killed by the blob in the basement. So
yeah, but that's the weird thing though, is you immediately feel unheroic in that case. I think there is something to be said. I understand there are players who will like Curse of Strahd just on the basis of it's a grinder and it's hard.
Right.
And if you have a great DM, he might be able to introduce some humor that could definitely help. It's really hard to sit around a table with your friends for 4 hours and not giggle once.
Yeah.
It can happen, but it's hard to do. So, but even still, you take away the party's possibility of being heroes. I know there's evil parties out there, but at the end of the day, you're here to slay dragons. You're here to fight beholders and win loot. And if you're evil, you might have a big scheme, or if you're a murder hobo, you might want to kill things. You really don't get to do that in Curse of Strahd. You don't get to be heroic. You don't really get to kill things. And you don't really get to make a master plan. So every avenue for an alignment character is mute. Besides that initial depression simulator kind of feeling behind it. What else do you have for it? Because I've got one off the top of my head, which is there is no loot.
Yeah, that is actually a really great point. I think one thing that really got me, that really sticks in my head, I remember the Death House, my DM drew out the map, he took the paper and he laid it over the hallways, and so we had to be very careful, and okay, DM, I step and look down the hall, but I don't expose myself. I just wanted you to take the paper off so I know. And this is really cool because this was awesome to experience. Right. We would go into different rooms, and every time we would go into a room, there was no reward. We would just get punished. It was either, okay, we walk into a room, what's here? Okay, boxes. Okay, what is in the boxes? And nothing. No one's been here for a long time. It's okay. So then there's nothing. You go to a different room and say, okay, what's in here? And then the carpet gets up and it begins to strangle you. And then 10 minutes go by and you eventually kill the carpet. But okay, so is there loot here? What? I went through the challenge. I'm looking, I'm engaged here. Is there any kind of reward for being engaged? Because if there's not every time, and actually exploration is punished because things are so dangerous. One character got killed first session because he walked too close to the oven, and there was a grick in the oven, and it killed him because he was a wizard and had 8 hit points. Right. So dead first session. Right. It punishes you for trying to sneak into a room, look for things, because there's no loot. There's definitely a fail condition, but what is winning? Is it just escaping the fail? You know what I mean? I think that's a really good point. There's no loot.
Even if the loot was, I don't know, even story based. That's the one thing that I actually think a missed opportunity in the lore as a whole, which, by the way, I know people don't like questioning lore. Mm-hmm. I know people read a Wikipedia page and that is it. Mm-hmm. It is now in stone. Or even worse, they see a video of a guy who read a Wikipedia page and now it is it, period. Right. But for instance, the Vistani, the native people who are able to leave Strahd's realm, they are spies and helpers. One of the things that I think is a missed opportunity is you need to have a dynamic with your villain that feels like a back and forth. Right. Batman solving Riddler's riddles feels like there's a progression and eventually he beats the Riddler, right? Mm. Having the players meet the Vistani, and let's say they can travel out of Barovia, they can leave this demiplane, and guess what? They just can. They just do it in spite of Strahd, and Strahd doesn't know how, and he hates them, and they do it out of spite for him. And then when the players come, they're like, hey, we're trying to kill the old bastard. They go, hey, we hate him. If you want to go for it, sure. Otherwise, we're just going to keep flipping him off. That's more interesting to me, that the villain doesn't know how they get in and out than the idea that he has spies, because he has spies everywhere else. He has villains. He has people, eyes and ears on all posts and sides. All citizens are under him. All houses look for him. Everything else is working to his advantage. Mm. So having players go, we need to push and pull with the villain. We need to beat him somehow. Let's go find our allies. And what if there's kind of a group? And that could be a safety spot. Oh, thank God, we found Vistani. Mm-hmm. Oh, thank God. We get to hang out with them and talk plans and have no fear of repercussions. And maybe Strahd tries to kill their allies and then they can defend them. There's suddenly a new dynamic. Maybe Definitely. The Vistani sell them magic items, ? Mm-hmm. Make it feel like there's more of a progression than just a punishment. Because Absolutely. Yeah, in that case, you feel like you're getting stronger. Otherwise, the level up system is just numbers on a page. You don't feel stronger because you've been getting hit in the dick the entire time.
Yeah. I think as you're going through, like there's never that sense of, oh, right, now we have a leg up on him, like,
right.
And every interaction with Strahd himself, they tend to just be, oh, I make fun of you. Aha, you are going to lose. And when you go through all these different things and they're hard, like, what about the Raven things? Like what they, like in our campaign, they just got massacred and we were like, oh man, like we got to get out of here. And then we ran away and like,
we got skedaddle.
Yeah. And it still feels like we are just still trying to survive, like I think that survival is a really, really cool premise. I think it forces some really cool role play, really cool character progression at first, because like my character, I played a paladin. He was like a drunkard or whatever. And he came in and he did not touch alcohol because like, I can't. I have 6 hit points. I was on fire 10 minutes ago. Like I can't do that. So I have to survive. So like,
right.
That's pretty cool. But if you hit level 5 and then you go level 8 and it's still just survive. You could die at any time. Do you have a second character sheet? Because you should. Where's the factions? Where's the allies? Where's the like cracks in his plan? Like I think there needs to be that sense of personal progression with loot and then like, story progression where like, hey, I think we might be kind of winning here.
Right. We're getting stronger. We're getting better.
Yeah.
And having your players feel as though they're making some kind of progression makes the villain feel possibly defeatable. And you don't have to undercut his authority. His authority is the realm itself. We fear the realm, we fear him. So there's no reason to make him omnipresent and perfect in all ways, because that doesn't lend to a villain that feels like, why would I fight him? Why would I fight him? Even if I'm level 10, which is kind of the stat block issue that people have with Strahd. I've heard people complain that he's kind of a bad stat block. But it does feel kind of anticlimactic if you have, let's say, 5 people, level 10, right? That can take on a CR 15 easy, right? And he's got weird exploits, create and destroy water if you've got clever players. And in the grand scheme of things, let's say they beat him kind of easily. So they feel like shit the entire time, and then they murk him. And it's a bit unsatisfying. I've heard that, and I've also heard of people getting just crushed by Strahd easy because he comes to them earlier in the levels, because frankly, that's what a evil vampire wizard would do. He would kill the players immediately. But here's the problem. Yes, Tiamat, Asidorak, Asmodeus should just kill the players outright. That does not make a good story. Yeah. I understand the mindset of, well, if I'm evil and omnipresent and I want them dead, why don't I just kill them? You're right. That rationality is correct, Mandark. However, that doesn't make this thing function well. The Joker knows where the Batcave is. Why doesn't he just go in, kill Alfred, kill Batman, kill Robin in their sleep? Because he wants a performance. There's narcissism involved. There's a story to be had. It really does feel a little bit odd. And I understand the gripes about the Death House. It can be used good and bad. Like you said, it made good stakes, but at the same time, it did kill players immediately. And that raises the stakes, but it doesn't lower them at all. There's no kind of de-escalation from that. I've seen a lot of people want to change that. And then I've seen people go, oh man, Strahd seems kind of like a bitch with his stat block. I better add a ton of shit. And it's like, well, first of all, he's got minions. And second of all, don't. Let the players kill the bad guy. Let them have that at least.
That was something I struggled with as a player going through it, because there's that constant sense of just, I need to survive. And then, you're looking at your stat sheet and you're watching the levels go up and, you're getting pretty strong. It may not feel like that, but like, you can get a lot of damage in one round, like there's some cool stuff there. And half of the time I'm thinking like, why doesn't he just kill us? Like he comes in, he knows where you are at all times. If you say his name, he knows where you are. That's something that we thought too.
He's Voldemorting really hard.
Exactly. All the time. And it's like, dude, because then you have this whole persona of I am so smart all the time. but I'm still here and I have a great sword. So like, I think one thing that's really important is selling that, because any villain, they should just, there's always easy ways of, well, what if he just had a gun, you know, like, but that's not interesting. So I think one thing that you really need to think about is you got to sell, like, okay, this guy is a mastermind genius. This is his place. Everybody's scared of him. And really communicate to your players in the world, you know, why isn't he killing you? And it can't just be the same reason every time, because there comes a point where you're level 10 and you're a real threat. And
you are.
Exactly. So you need to, as a DM, explain, like, you know, he's busy with other stuff, you know, some other things are going on in the realm and he's preoccupied. He has other things to do. Maybe he's sleeping or something. I don't know. But like, you got to convince your players, because otherwise, like, I experienced the feeling of like, is he really that, like, what's he doing? Like, is he just lounging? And if so, like, I think it's just really important to really communicate, like, hey guys, this is why Strahd hasn't killed you. I swear he's smart though. You know, like, you got to be a little bit creative, I think, in communicating that.
Well, it's funny because I've gone through this module so many times, and one of the things I've noticed is I've seen different DMs take different angles on the Strahd character, which is nice just to kind of see a variety hour of it.
Mm-hmm.
I had one DM who was very much, Strahd shows up, he taunts the party a lot, he's torturing you just because he's a sadistic psychopath. And while that at first kind of felt like, oh no, what are we going to do? It really did feel like a kid kind of walking up to a bunch of like mice in a cage and just rattling it for 2 minutes and then walking away. And it's like, I get he's a psychopath,
right?
But I want to know where the means of to the end is. And then I had another DM who kind of went the route of, he's so powerful, he's so beyond the beyond, why would he care about you? And that's an interesting idea, but for a moment.
Right.
Because while he doesn't care about you, that means we don't know anything about him. And then we got to his castle after he sends a wedding invitation to people who don't know him. And he shows up and he's like, hello. And we're like, hello, we're here to kill you. And he's like, yes, the plot demands it.
Nice.
You know? So there's that weird interplay that you need to have. I think Strahd is a personal villain, not a cosmic villain. There are kind of two levels of D&D villains that kind of go in the vein of comic books. There are things like Darkseid in DC Comics, who is a multi-dimensional being and like the concept of evil, right? He lives on a place called Apocalypse. He's fighting the new gods. And you have characters like Orcus and Tiamat that are so big and cosmic and weird that they're more of a thing of the universe than an actual person. But then you have characters in comics that are like the Joker or the Riddler, Batman's Rogues Gallery, Lex Luthor, that have flaws and are kind of more of a person. In D&D, that was like Zariel and Descend into Avernus. Now, in those two camps of villains, there are ways to play them. The classic idea is the heroes are trying to beat a cosmic threat, and he does see them as ants, but they are still somehow able to overtake them, probably because of the villain's own, like, I am beyond you, hubris. In the way of kind of that personal villain, there's this idea of, oh, he has this relationship with the players, to the point where the back of the fucking module says it's all part of his plan. So he has a relationship with us. Okay, well then in our relationship, it shouldn't be completely one-sided. We should get the upper hand on him, and he should be surprised and annoyed. We need to poke him almost as much as he pokes us. He might not show it as much as we show it to him, because that's more interesting for the antagonist, but we still should be able to go, hey, Strahd, we got your cloak, ha, and him go, I'll kill you. You know, that's more compelling. It's interesting because Strahd is a Dracula clone.
Yes.
I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't mean to say it.
Yes.
I didn't mean to break it out, but it's true. And that's not a bad thing. Dracula isn't a bad villain.
Not at all.
But he's a vague villain. That's the issue. He's been kind of he's been flanderized so much to kind of fold in on himself. So the concepts behind Dracula are more stigmas than actual character plot hooks. And the story of Strahd takes pieces of it and weaves it together in this way that feels new, uses old elements, but is also kind of against itself. There are motivations for Strahd that kind of just don't make sense. I think one of the issues with it is he fundamentally is a fuckboy.
Well put. Really well put. No, I really like that.
He is.
I've never thought about it like that, but that's great. I love that.
He kind of is, and that's kind of the weird part of this module is that Strahd is flaunted as D&D's greatest villain.
Mm-hmm.
He beats Asmodeus in a lot of polls. He beats the Demogorgon. He beats Tiamat because he's personal. And he has a backstory that feels rich and human to a lot of people. But it's also weird as a player.
Yeah.
Because
no, totally.
He's got these Dracula-inspired elements, and some of them make him feel dumb. He's got a love of his, Tatiana, who
Yes.
formerly was someone else, but she got reincarnated, yada, yada, yada. And he wants her. And that's kind of the big driving arc of his character. Something with his brother, something with his older brother. I don't really want to get into it that much because I think a DumpStat villains Count Strahd is gonna happen. And we can go into a lore thing there. But he wants Tatiana to marry, and he's willing to just charm her and just use her as this weird object of desire. And I think the issue people might have with that is that thematically speaking, it doesn't really compel me. It doesn't really compel me. And on top of that, it does make his ultimate plan for Barovia sound petty. It's kind of like when Voldemort wants to take over a fucking high school. What? Like, you're an ultimate being you're the first vampire in some lore cases. You have all this power, and you like to just be petty and just play with things. And I guess to some people, that's a compelling villain. But to me, that sounds like just kind of a fuckboy. And he wants a girlfriend. And I bet to a lot of neckbeards out there, hell yeah, buddy. But not to me. It just, the actual, and spoilers, he just wants a girl. And he wants to just charm her and have her. And I kind of feel like players end up going, hey, we killed Strahd and we got out of there. Not, hey, we saved that woman. Because that's...
Yeah.
It's kind of falls flat thematically. Do you get what I'm saying?
I mean, two things there. One, it's really, really hard to get your party to care about an NPC in general.
Sure.
Super hard. Some things might not just click. Maybe they're just not feeling it. And then, also, you don't want to take away from the spotlight from your players, because if you have an NPC around all the time, it's not their story. This is the story of your characters fighting this villain. So, for us, we had Irina with us all the time, and we completely forgot. Like, we'd have whole sessions with her, and, she wouldn't say much. And I think that's completely the right move from the DM, because, I mean, like, it's not her story. She's an NPC. So, on the one hand, it's super hard to care about this, because it's hard to just care about another NPC. And Strahd's thing is this person. That can be compelling for, I think, a little bit. And it was for us, but it came to a point where it's like, oh my gosh, like, this is annoying. So there's that, where his primary motivation, you got to make your party care about Irina. But that's weird, because you're kind of making them care about a story that doesn't really involve them fully, and that can be weird to do. But I think on top of that, you say that, and I think you're completely right. This is a personal villain. This is someone who speaks with you, who's all around all the time. It's really important to play into that. This is kind of a weirdly intimate relationship, but if the other person is just a fuckboy all the time, if all he does is evil, dark shit all the time, the only thing that's going to happen is Strahd's going to come in and say, hey guys, and then you're gonna say, go fuck yourself, dude, we're not doing this right now. And like, you're missing out on like humanizing the character, because you can't really humanize a fuckboy.
That's true.
Too much, because them being a fuckboy means, well, that's really not chill, dude. Can't do that. And if you keep doing that, this isn't gonna work. So for your relationship between your players and your villain to be personal, there's got to be layers there. And him being a fuckboy, Strahd is super intelligent, incredibly dangerous. He's lived a long time. This guy's the real deal. He is a masterful, greedy guy, but he doesn't have to be a fuckboy.
Right.
Like you can have a character and a villain be that. You can have that scary guy who's super dominating, but he doesn't have to be a fuckboy. And so, it's something that you really need to think carefully about, because there's a lot of ways that just falls flat. That just doesn't work, So,
well,
I don't know. I think you're right.
It's also just the matter of, when you look at him in the Hall of Fame, for me at least, you look at Asmodeus, the Satan of D&D. He's deceptive. He makes contracts. Every evil bit of the universe revolves around him, and he schemes to destroy the gods themselves. And then you look at the Demogorgon, a large, terrible, baboon-faced beast, raging into madness, and goal is to make the whole world mad. And then you look at, even recently, Azariel from Descent into Avernus, a fallen angel who can be redeemed, but you need to work hard because the seed of wrath is in her mind at all times. Or Rime of the Frost Maiden. Really cool villains. I'm not going to spoil them.
Whew, close one.
Yeah.
I was going to say.
Then you look at Strahd, and you go, he's the first ever vampire ruler of a demiplane. He's a powerful wizard who has a mighty control over his subjects. Even death cannot best him. And he wants to get the princess and put it in his castle and marry her. Oh God, it's Bowser. No! Like, it's...
dude.
That
he's so lonely. He's so
lonely, dude. And I understand. I get it. I like My Chemical Romance too. But the issue is, I look at him and I see this motivation that I feel like, if he really is this vampire, I can understand having those weird like quirks, in the sense of he's got these weird eccentric hangups. That's cool. I want a girlfriend is not cool. It's just, it's kind of weird. And I understand that romance is part of the vampire story. You look at the cover of Curse of Strahd, he's suave, holding a card and a little bit of blood in a cup. I get it. But I still think fundamentally, when I look at the character, I feel like that motivation, that driving plot does not add up as much as the rest of it. I like the weird family lore he has. I like the strange relationship with his brother. I like the fact that his lover ran away from him and threw herself off a cliff, essentially. I think that's a cool backstory for a villain. I think the issue is, now he goes, yes, my backstory. The only reason I go. And that's... kind of not great for a villain. And I know a lot of villains fall into that, where the backstory is connected to the main plot, and the best thing you can do is either destroy the villain or redeem them by going to part A of that plot. But a good way to handle it is seeing the entire character and going, okay, he's insane, kind of, or at least a psychopath. He's sadistic. He's a vampire. What does he really, really want? Maybe he wants to destroy the dark powers that made him a vampire in the first place.
Yeah.
Maybe he wants to collect enough souls so he can make his wife again. I don't know if you really want to run that. Or maybe, just maybe, you could even do the take over the world thing with vampires if you want to. But I, for one, when I look at that motivation, I find it, first of all, kind of awkward because charm is not great. And two, I don't see this villain that people have been telling me about. I see a lot of missed potential. And I know when I say that, there are some people who go, I had a great time with Strahd. And I go, that's a lot of your DM. Your DM did a great job. Your DM's fucking fire. Because rules as written, I don't think he's all that great a villain. But the ways to improve him are not in the stat block. It's in the motivations.
Definitely.
It's in his story. It's how he overcomes the party. I think him having a beating heart of hit points, having minions amongst his castle, hell, being confident enough to invite you over for dinner like a Hannibal Lecter vampire is dope across the board. But again, I want to get marriage. Marriage is what brings us together.
Sure is.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I mean, like, as a player going through it, I kind of got the sense like, this is a pretty desperate guy.
Right.
This is someone who seems like, and I think that's a really cool angle to play into, like you have this master manipulator, this incredible general, and he's everywhere, and everything's under his thumb and all that stuff. But he brings people in. The only way people get into Barovia is if he lets them in, and he let in the players. And it's really interesting because, like, you have this immortal guy who is racked by the hell of his vampiric condition and just the hell of, I'm so lonely all the time. And rather than saying him, his desperation manifests in fuckboyness, he wants to get married. Why not, play into why is he bringing the characters in?
Right.
Tie his main motivation in terms of that desperation, that dark lore, that history, and center it rather than on, a helpless dame, the princess. Center it on the players. Why is he bringing the players in if his main motivation is to get Irina or Tatiana or whatever? Why is this person desperate? What does that look like in terms of the players? Is it like, hey guys, please kill me? Like, is it something like that? Because it kind of seems like that. And that could be really cool. Like, imagine after Death House, I'm on the ground, 3 hit points. I was on fire 2 minutes ago. And this big bad guy comes over and says, hey guys, I brought you here to please kill me. And that could be really interesting, I think. I was just thinking about that. But I think it's really important to really read this character because I think there's something really cool there. Someone like Strahd does not get the amount of love that they do without being, it's not all shit there. There's definitely some very problematic stuff. And depending on who's playing, it can be tough. The whole thing's kind of like a depression simulator. And then you have this super abusive, manipulative guy, and that's really tough. But these are things that I think can totally be adjusted, if not fixed completely. There's some cool lore here. So, like, use that. What does the desperation manifest in rather than this problematic fuckboyness? What does it look like? Humanize this character somewhat rather than being, you don't want to read a book and go, okay, he's sadistic, next page. Okay, he's a psychopath, next page. Okay, he's a murderer.
Right.
And like, that's pretty one-dimensional. And this guy's how many thousands of years old or whatever?
Right.
Expand this guy because he should be expanded.
He should be. And one of the ideas I had for maybe a inciting incident, a start off for the actual adventure would be the party is hired by, let's say, a vampire hunting guild, a Dawnguard. We even have essentially a Van Helsing in the book. Maybe he hires you, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're outside Barovia, and he's like, we need to just get into Barovia. We have this plan. It's eccentric. You go to this temple, you get this thing, and maybe we'll be able to get in. You get the staff, you try to plunge your way in, and then you all will try to kill Strahd. He needs to go down. And when you kind of ask these vampire hunters why, they give you he's a vampire. Like, they need to die, right? He's the OG vampire. Maybe if we destroy him, vampirism's gone. You ever think of that?
Mm-hmm.
So they go through this quest that seemingly doesn't really work out. And then they get to essentially the fog bank where it all starts. They realize their magic item isn't working and they can't get in.
Mm-hmm.
But then Strahd casually opens the door for them anyway. And they have this realization of, why the fuck would Dracula let us in here?
Yeah.
And that is enough to give abstract terror to a player more than just about anything else. And then they try to piece together why. And it could be for him to kill us, or maybe he wants information on said vampire hunters to wipe them out. Or it could be as simple as, hey, you want in? You're in. Welcome to my torture chamber. It sucks. I'm just as much a prisoner here as you do. Now, try to kill me, ooga booga ooga booga. But I do agree, though, if he's so old and he's not cosmic, because that's the other thing. If it's like Orcus, where he's just a manifestation of undeath, then yeah, you're basically trying to kill the stars at that point, which is cool because characters from the dawn of time, Perseus tried to destroy Medusa and the Kraken, like the concepts of power being destroyed or conquered by a hero has happened since the very start of storytelling. That's not an issue. What the issue is he is a personified human that has lived so long, and those weird it should feed into his mindset. We should be able to see different dimensions behind him. I mean, wizards are super strange and eccentric. I'm okay with extrinsic, like, let's say he's allergic to books or something. I don't really care about that. That's a cool little lore bit, and that adds to the eccentricity. But in the long term, I need more of those bits and not just, hey, how you doing? I'm the main fuckboy. And it's weird. And again, it's weird because the actual climate of Curse of Strahd sees him as the pinnacle of villain storytelling. And I think he might start to be overshadowed just because new villains are now being written for different modules that have more of a personal touch. I think part of the reason why he got so famous for 5e is because Critical Role bounced it up. It was an early module, and it was hard, and it's a legacy hard. So there are people who played early Ravenloft, and you have a challenge now. And it's easy to pick up as a DM. DMs can just read this thing and just go off. If you're a new DM, Curse of Strahd is an easy read, but is it what your players need, especially for a first campaign? I see this as the first campaign everywhere, man. And this is a flavor that should be on Halloween. It shouldn't be played year-round, in my opinion, because you're kind of missing out on different stuff in D&D. You ever look through the monster manual? Look at the variety in that fucking book. Yeah. Look at the different races you could play. Every kind of furry, every kind of concept, we're playable now. The classes themselves are full of choices, subclasses even. There's 10 different kinds of tiefling, my guy. Like, the choices for D&D is weird and big and strange. And to limit yourself to this grimdark horror fantasy that may or may not work for your players. Yeah. If you really want to run Curse of Strahd, you should talk to your players in a way that is upfront.
Definitely. Getting that players and DM on the same page from the very beginning is super important, because like there comes a point where, you know, someone goes through town and they go pies, and then you go, I'll have a pie. And then you eat the pie, and then you learn later that was made out of the bones of a child. You know, like, and it's like, as a player, you're like, I don't even know how to react to that, because I can't even like create in my mind a real world like scenario where something as absolutely horrific and horrible as that. So like, you know, you have to say to your players like, hey, this is going to be a hard campaign in terms of encounters. It's going to be dangerous. What are we okay with and what are we not? I think that's super important. And I also think, you know, these things that we're talking about, I think that it's a way to actually make the coolest parts about Curse of Strahd cooler. You know, that gothic horror stuff and the whole mystique of Strahd, it falls short because Barovia comes off like a depression simulator. And Strahd's a fuckboy, and why is he not more complex than he is if he's that old? These adjustments, you know, it's a way to actually make the horror more compelling and more than just, whoa, it's made out of kids' bones? That's crazy, you know? Like, you can achieve these things without just going, and he is a murderer, and he is crazy. These are ways to really make that more complex. There's more to dig into. It's more compelling. It gives just the players a sense of like, okay, that's done, and now on to the next thing, you know, variety and stuff like that. But definitely players and DMs, players should know what they're walking into, because it is it is quite a shock when you go out for a poop and wake up in a torture prison for the next year and a half. That's pretty insane.
And you need to tell your players past the hype. That's one thing I do notice with some players who are like, yeah, I know, I saw some playthroughs of Curse of Strahd, I know what's going on, I'm in. And you still have to go like, yeah, but there's a difference from watching it and playing it and feeling it with a new table. Because one of the cooler things with Curse of Strahd, I do like the idea of the cards that you have to randomly make as a player for different things around the map. I think the map works well. Again, as a module, this thing is structured great for a DM. I just think that, word to the wise, if you are a DM and you're about to start Curse of Strahd, first of all, be willing for humor to manifest itself. It's a good thing.
Definitely.
Give players some loot. Give them a place to buy maybe a healing potion here or there. Let them be more than just possibly grounded into dirt. Again, in Dark Souls, they allow you to buy items and rest. And that is something that players need, and they need to be able to plan and focus in and go, okay, we're the heroes. That's the bad guy. We're here to fuck his plans up, or vice versa. Who knows? And if you like the idea of high stakes and your players like that too, great. Got to bring tension down a little bit. You can't just live up in that world. Survival instincts after 10 hours break the fuck down into just sadness. I really look at it and I think we need to work with DMs to figure out a way that allows players to rest and also allows them to be heroes. That's kind of the big thing that I want DMs to be aware of. And even, listen, if it means that you make a silly NPC and push them into Barovia, and they're there's Bongos the clown, you might be surprised. There might be some players who are like, oh, fucking thank Christ. Bongos, what are you like? And Bongo's like, I played the bongos.
Yeah.
And they're like, thank you. What else do you do? I don't eat children. And they're like, ha ha ha. Thank you, God.
I think it's the best NPC in that whole campaign was this guard. And we show up and my DM plays him like he's young, he's like, hi guys. And we're like, what's your name, dude? And he's like, I'm Lefroy. And then it just from there was this, it was hilarious. We had this constant interaction with this really just funny character who just didn't seem to really be a part of it.
Right.
And it was just great. I think you need stuff like that because at the end of the day, also, you're not your character. You're not actually in Barovia. You're a group of people around a table, and it's important to laugh when you're sitting together for 4 hours. These are hopefully friends, and, it should be fun. Not only for your characters, oh, a cool adventure, but, let's laugh a little bit, Don't have a campaign where you can't laugh.
Well, it's that kind of mentality of you're right. And if you're a new DM, I understand it's easy to pick up, and you're like, I know for me at least, when I first started DMing, and this is why it's so alluring, is the idea of, ooh, I get to run immediately, I get to kill players. TPKs are very fascinating when you just get into D&D. They're very interesting, ooh, I get to kill the heroes, and I'm God.
Yeah.
And that's the weird bit, is you get this God complex. But I'm going to be honest with you. A DM is less so God and more so a guy who's trying to build a slide for kids to play on. I recently helped out a friend of mine build for his kids a little playground and a play set. And they were running around, and every time they touched something and climbed on it, my first instinct was, yes, I did it. They're having fun. And that's how I feel every time I do a session. Yes, I did it. They're having fun. And even at the stressful points, at one point, his kids climbed up on the slide that we made far too high. And she climbed up on it, and her eyes went wide as she slid down in terror. She could die, but she makes it at the end, and she wants to go again. And I'm like, yes, fear can be fun. Good. It's why we go to horror movies. That's why. There's a way to do it. I think there are a couple of little tweaks immediately besides what we just said on levity that should be added as well. In my campaign right now, I am in the middle of a horror session, essentially. My players have accidentally teleported themselves into we'll say a lair of a transmutation mage who is mad and is talking to his bug wife thing that he's back and forth, and he's brainwashed her into this talking bug into essentially speaking like his 1950s wife, and he has box children, and he tries to make this whole world into some kind of like fucked up 1950s show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's a psychopath. Great. But he's eccentric and weird and a wizard. Now, my players teleported there willingly, right? Let's start there. They went willingly.
Right.
Number 2, it feels like the culmination of their decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, they have a lot of choices. There's kind of a lot of choices in Barovia, but I would take away some of those spots where, especially in the early game, where it's like you go down Hell Road and you see the castle. I'd say make it random. Let them start out in maybe some different spots in Barovia. Number 2, maybe give them a lifeline and saying, hey, if you pay a Vistani enough, you might be able to get out of here because they know how to do it.
Yeah.
Which would be nuts. And of course, right before you leave, Strahd would show up and go, no, whatever. I would also let their decisions compile, like building that you build the swing set. But another allegory for DMs is you're also building dominoes. You're basically putting dominoes everywhere, and then they knock things over.
Right.
And when they knock things over, let that lead into something else. Let one thing in one part of Barovia affect a different part of the demiplane.
Mm-hmm.
And use the lore, but don't let everybody be such a fucking downer. If you look at your players and after hour 3, you're like, they're like looking at you like, oh, Jesus, another insane kid screaming about being a werewolf. You got to go, okay, maybe there's a bakery. Like, you have to, that doesn't sell kids. Like, you have to do that. And again, let there be rewards for exploration. Let there be little treasure troves, and let it be dangerous. I'm not saying killing and high stakes are bad. I'm saying rewards are what makes people keep going. I think struggle is the basic premise behind the entire hero's arc. But in that struggle, things are gained. Okay? In the hero's narrative, he goes down into the dark place and arises anew, but with more skills, learning things, gaining items. That's the premise behind storytelling. So to just have him go down and down and down and down and down, and then at some point he goes, all right, time to kill, and go straight up 90 degrees is not as fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think Strahd as a character should have maybe some different goals narratively. But I also think even with his goals now, there are DMs who play him in such a way that their players fall in love. And then there are DMs who play him in such a way that their players will hate him. The reason why for that is because he's kind of on that fence where if you play him a little bit too creepy, people will hate him and think he's a fuckboy. If you play him a little bit too Dracula, people are going to go, there, I want to suck your blood, Count Chocula. Like, he's now a stereotype. So there needs to be a way for you to angle it where you can make it personal and at the same time make sure it feels like an important villain that you're talking to. And again, not just a fuckboy, which, by the way, I know there's going to be some people who love Strahd and they're going to hear us with our criticisms and say, please don't call my favorite villain a fuckboy. Again, this is my and John's personal opinions.
Yes.
And I'm going to be straight up and saying, I think there's going to be more parts to this module. I think I'm going to probably talk to other people because even here, kind of on the DumpStat staff, we do have people in our vicinity who love this module.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to them too and see what makes them tick. But I've played this so many times and I know it's made for me and I know I want to love it and I know it wants to love me back. But God damn it, I really don't have it in me. I give this 2 flumps out of 10. Um,
I like that scale. I like that scale a lot.
no. 3 flumes. It's really well structured.
Three? Are there any flumps in Barovia?
No, there should be, though.
Maybe there should be.
You see, that's the funny part about the Underdark. The Underdark is very depressing, and, the Shadowfell, the Underdark, there's all sorts of dark evil places in D&D. But in Hell, there's the weird Heffalump, weird fucking elephants you can meet. In the Underdark, there's floofs. And in Barovia, there's just dead children. Like, that's...
And zombies and werewolves and skeletons.
Ooh!
Scary.
Okay, I think one of the... Here's how I can sum it down, my opinion. In Curse of Strahd, there needs more spooktacular savings. There needs to be more silly bits of Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a talking jack-o'-lantern. Like, come on. But with those kind of improvements in my mind, I can't help but feel like I want to DM Curse of Strahd.
Feeling the same thing, dude.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same thing. I do not think this is a bad, I don't think it's bad. I don't hate it. It was a hard experience, especially as a new player. And there's a lot of things that I really hate that I don't like. But I mean, the way we're talking about this, this is cool. This is awesome. And it can be an incredible experience. I would love to go through it again for the first time like this. I would love to DM it from the other side like this. Because the stuff is cool. It's a sick theme, a really cool villain. Really, high stakes is it's awesome. I love the horror elements. And with these kind of adjustments, damn, yeah, I would love to play this, whether as a DM or as a player.
Right.
It sounds really cool.
And it's weird, though, because I realized in researching Curse of Strahd, because I wanted to just have the module that I didn't have it on hand, because, again, I've mostly been a player.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I need to get it. So I went to the DM who DM'd you originally, and I said, hey, can I have your Curse of Strahd book?
Mm-hmm.
And immediately his eyes lit up because he loves it. And he gave it to me with this it felt very sacred, because I looked at it. I looked at this book, and it is the most scratched up, and inside it there's Post-its. And I was like, no. This is like when I was growing up, when they used to say, a good man is a man who has a worn Bible. It's a person who has poured themselves into it. So when I say I understand the fervor and love for this module and the community that has arisen from it, mind you, I say that with the utmost respect, especially for a friend of mine who gave me something that clearly is a part of his heart.
Yeah.
But I need it to be improved, just for the basic premise that I want to improve it. I find it a challenge as a DM, and I want to make sure that my players, if I'm playing in it or if I'm running it, have a good time, because it has this pitfall where you could be around a table and nothing good happens for hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in my humble opinion, is why we need more flooms. And it's why we need to improve. We don't need to just bash. We need to fix.
Yeah.
Anybody can be the nostalgia critic and scream about something for a couple of hours, but it takes actual courage to say, I want to improve this. And it's that weird feeling I have of, I want to DM it, or I want to play in an improved version of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm willing to do something over DumpStat. I am.
Yeah, dude. We've got something cool here. I think we have some really nice tools, tips, and tricks on the table.
Absolutely. And I do want to. One of the reasons why I'm going to be talking to other people is because it's such a broad module that's gone so many places.
Totally.
That it can't just be us talking about it.
No.
There's other people who have opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And moreover, part of it was when I was watching Puffin Forrest. He's a DM cartoonist, or a D&D cartoonist. He did a whole thing for Curse of Strahd, and he's such a positive person. And I was watching his recap with his DM, and there was this really awkward point between the two of them where they go, yeah, there was a session where everyone was just sad. And I was sitting there going like, why is that a good thing? You know, like, I had this moment of just weird anger, not a puffin, but just the fact that the DM said it. I was sitting there going like, God damn it, why are we okay with this?
Yeah.
Why don't we improve? Why don't we strive for better? And that is why 3 flumps out of 10. Do the floof song, Goblin. Oh my God, I love the fact that I can do it.
Flumps were wise and possessed advanced knowledge of philosophy and other subjects.
John, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking to me about Curse of Strahd. I
dude.
think it is a very interesting undertaking trying to talk about the most beloved module in the game right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really interesting thing to talk about. And I think for people who do play it normal, you know, like I don't think my DM's a bad DM, just because I had some difficulty with it. You know, it was a great experience. There were some things I want to improve, but I think it's really important to talk about this kind of stuff and really think about this stuff and, you know, not just take it for granted because it is the curse of Strahd, you know, and I think it's an important conversation.
Right. Absolutely. How many flumps? You gotta give me the flumps.
Oh, man. Flumps?
Yeah, flumps, buddy.
Oh, boy. I'm going to give it a 4.
4 flumps.
4 flumps.
All right.
4 flumps out of 10. That's what I'm going to do.
I like it.
Yep.
They're floating around your head right now, giving you little kissies.
Yeah. My first time with this metric, but yeah.
You know, it's I think I'll catch on. All right. All right. Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. If you have a different opinion, message us, tell us, be honest, poke holes in our arguments, attack what we have to say. That's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, we love you back and we don't want to be hostile. All right, everybody. Like, share, subscribe, as I mentioned before, and we will talk to you all later. John, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Of course. No problem.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Whoa.
You've just been listening to DumpStat, a podcast presented by Horizon Kingdoms. Horizon Kingdoms is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition server that's free to play. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and join up on Discord to join in on a new adventure. For more DumpStat, be sure to find us on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe.